Okay, you know the headlines. We're always hearing about these super sophisticated hacks, crazy new malware, and these really clever phishing attacks. But what if one of the biggest threats to your organization isn't some brand new attack? What if it's a vulnerability that's been hiding in plain sight since day one? Let's talk about misconfigurations.
Really think about that for a second. We're not talking about some complex, zero-day exploit that nobody's ever seen before. No, we're talking about default settings, forgotten access rules, simple little administrative errors. Now, on their own, they might just seem like small oversights. But when you put them all together, they create these massive security holes that attackers are actively, and I mean actively, hunting for.
So you look at a number like 99.9% security, and at first glance, that sounds pretty fantastic, right? But let's put that into perspective. Would you get on a plane if it had a 99.9% chance of landing safely? All of a sudden, that tiny 0.1% risk feels absolutely enormous. In a large company, that same tiny percentage could mean thousands of vulnerable devices, and every single one is a potential open door for an attack.
And this is what we call the configuration blind spot. So, why does this even exist, and what do these vulnerabilities actually look like in the real world?
Well, to put it simply, a misconfiguration is just a setting that puts convenience way ahead of security. You know, when you get a new device or you install a new operating system, it's designed to work instantly right out of the box. The big problem is working and secure are almost never the same thing by default. So here are some classic examples. You've got things like leaving an old file sharing protocol like SMB version 1 enabled, which by the way has some severe, very well-known vulnerabilities. Or even worse, exposing remote desktop protocol to the internet. That's basically the digital equivalent of leaving your front door unlocked, wide open, with a welcome mat out. These aren't obscure settings. They're common defaults that attackers are scanning for automatically, all day, every day.
And this really gets to the heart of the problem. There's this fundamental conflict of interest. A vendor's main goal is usability. They want their product to just work for as many people as possible. But an enterprise, well, your goal is security and compliance. You need hardened systems that operate on a zero-trust principle, which is the complete and total opposite of the trust everything by default model that vendors give you.
So if the problem is literally baked into the default settings, how in the world do you fix it? Well, this requires a whole new strategy, a new layer of defense that's focused specifically on hunting down these configuration flaws. This quote from Yuri Tsibare at ThreatLocker just reframes the whole issue perfectly. We have to start treating a misconfiguration with the exact same urgency as an active breach. Why? Because for an attacker, that's exactly what it is. It's the first step in the door.
And this brings us to this idea of defense against configurations, or DAC for short. Now, this is not a one-time fix. It's a continuous, ongoing process of scanning, identifying, and flagging these vulnerabilities in near real time across every single machine on your network. Okay, so the process itself is actually pretty straightforward, but it's incredibly powerful. First, you have an agent that's constantly scanning each machine, looking for these known misconfigurations. Then, all that data gets fed into a central dashboard, so you have this one unified view of everything. From there, the issues are automatically prioritized by how severe they are, so you know exactly what to fix first, and the system even gives you guidance on how to do it.
This whole approach, it represents a massive shift from how we've traditionally thought about handling system hardening. This chart just shows the contrast perfectly. You know, the old way involved running a script when you first deployed a machine, and then maybe a formal audit once a year. That's just a single snapshot in time. The DAC approach is much more like a live video feed. It can detect something called configuration drift. You know, those small, insecure changes that users or even software updates introduce over time. It catches those within a day, not 6 months down the road. So the key benefit here is continuous visibility. You're no longer blindfolded between those annual audits, just kind of guessing about your security posture. With this, you're seeing it live, every single day.
And this also ties directly into one of the most important security philosophies out there today: zero trust.
The logic here is really simple. Default settings operate on what we call implicit trust. They just trust apps, processes, and connections by default. Zero trust architecture does the exact opposite. It operates on the principle of never trust, always verify. So DAC helps enforce this principle at the most fundamental level you can think of, the operating system configuration itself.
And you know, there's a huge practical benefit here too.
By systematically finding and fixing these misconfigurations, you're not just boosting your security, you're also getting aligned with all these major compliance frameworks, like ISO and the NIST standards. This makes your audits so much smoother, and it clearly demonstrates you're doing your due diligence.
So why is this more important right now than ever before? Well, it's because the nature of the threats we're facing is changing fast. I mean, think about it. Today's attackers are using automated, AI-powered tools to constantly scan the entire internet for these simple misconfigurations. They are no longer searching for a needle in a haystack. They are sweeping the entire field with a giant magnet, and they're going to find it.
Here's the bottom line. A default configuration is an automated mistake just waiting to be found. And to defend against automated attacks, you first have to eliminate these automated vulnerabilities. A secure, hardened configuration isn't just a best practice anymore. It's your most foundational, most critical line of defense, period.
Ultimately, even with the best tools in the world, we have to account for human error. You can train your staff, but people will always make mistakes. Someone enables a setting for what they think is a valid business purpose, and then just forgets to turn it off. And that is exactly why an automated technical control that is constantly double-checking for these errors is so absolutely essential.
So I guess the real question to leave you with is this. What silent risks are hiding in your default settings? Because it's not the threats you can see that pose the biggest danger. It's the ones that have been there, silently, all along. And finding them is the first and most critical step toward building a truly resilient defense.